What is up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, and on the phone we got Gabe from Enterprise Earth. Great to talk to you, man. Thank you for your time today.
Hey, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
It's so awesome to have you here. I want to thank you for giving the listeners something new to get from you guys because, you know, Luciferius was awesome. Really enjoyed that album. And now we got the Foundation of Bones EP. Does the Foundation of Bones EP, even though it includes, you know, a cover and, you know, an acoustic version and an instrumental version, could it at all maybe serve as a representation on the direction that Enterprise Earth is going into?
Sure, yeah. We definitely view this as it's kind of bridging the gap between Luciferus and the coming LP, which is already in the works. So yeah, just moving forward to our next phase in our musical journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, because, you know, a lot of people were really into Luciferius when it came out in 2019. What I was curious is, when the making of this album, was this like a direct follow-up to Embodiment, or was this like a new start in a way for Enterprise Earth?
In reference to Luciferus or to Foundation of Bones? It was kind of like a rebirth for us because Luciferus was the first album that I had written with the band because I joined like right when Embodiment was coming out. So we had kind of a change in the guard in terms of the instrumentation writing. So of course, you know, that kind of brought some different flares and tastes and whatnot. But it was definitely a big evolution for Enterprise, and yeah, we're all very stoked on where things are headed.
Yeah, being that you came into the band after the release of Embodiment, were you looking at, like, you know, that record and the record before that being like, okay, this is how I have to play, or being that you played with other bands before, you were kind of like allowed to bring a little bit of your own mix to Enterprise Earth?
Yeah, it was me trying to mix what I had done in the past with what, you know, Enterprise was already doing. I'd honestly never really written like full-on death metal before or anything like that. So it was fun just kind of trying to, you know, be influenced by what BJ, the old guitarist who's no longer in the band, what he had written in the past, and then all the stuff that I liked as well.
Yeah, which is really cool because I feel like that, you know, Luciferus is really like great, like turning point record. I feel like, you know, the records before it were awesome and, you know, there was a lot of anticipation, but it almost feels like that this album kind of really defined what Enterprise Earth is all about.
Sure, yeah, it definitely felt like a rebirth for us. It honestly felt like we were starting over with that album. That's nothing against the preceding albums and EP, but it was a big. We saw some very noticeable growth in ourselves as musicians, and then just in the band in general whenever that album came out. So yeah, we're very stoked on it.
I really admire your riffing style and your guitar style in general. Do you have like a theoretical background in which you follow, or do you tend to like to improvise a lot with your guitar work? Like I do know music theory. I took formal lessons for about a year back when I was 18. But it's not like that I don't let that dictate, you know, what I'm writing or anything like that. At the end of the day, it's just what sounds good. But understanding theory can help one connect the dots a little faster when you're writing. It'll help you put melodies together faster that you may be hearing in your head. So it definitely helps having that background. If you don't mind me asking, though, if you were to show like a professional like music theory teacher like Enterprise Earth and they listen to it, how do you think they would feel about it?
I think they would enjoy it and appreciate it and stuff like that because I have a lot of classical influences and stuff like that. So like most of the acoustic work is very classically inspired, follows, you know, kind of set chord progressions and, you know, tonal motifs and stuff like that. So yeah, there is some calculation behind all of that. But at the same time, like I said, at the end of the day, it's just what sounds good. Sometimes you'll do some chromatic riffage that doesn't make any sense, but you do it because it sounds good.
Yeah. That in the end, that's what matters. It's like you've mentioned like you don't necessarily think about it and you don't really let it dictate you too much. But it almost feels like when you learn it, it just becomes a part of you in a way, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It just becomes another tool in your toolbox, and you can never have too many tools. So
yeah, of course. Especially with, you know, the guitar rigs and everything. Are you running out of a lot of pedals and stuff as well?
Well, I don't really use any pedals at the moment. It's all in my Kemper, or if I'm recording, it's all it's on Cubase, it's all in my DAW. So I used to have a bunch of pedals, but the Kemper's the Kemper's effects are killer. I don't really need them at the moment. And not that there's nothing wrong with pedals. Like each brand of pedal will offer their own flair and will color the sound. I guess I should put it this way: if I could afford to have a lot of pedals, I definitely would. But at the moment, I'm quite content with my Kemper and with my plugins.
Yeah, not to mention, I think you would make a guitar tech's life a lot easier as well.
Yes, yeah, it's easier. There's nothing on like when we play, there's nothing on stage. Everything's MIDI mapped, like all my patch changes and stuff like that. So there's nothing on stage at all. It's nice and clean and great.
Yeah. Kind of moving on back to Luciferus. Being that this was, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the first record that E1 picked up, right?
Yes, yeah, this was the first record on E1, yeah.
Awesome. So, great team of people. Huge shout out to everybody there at E1. Working with them, just being picked up by them, did that at all maybe influence the writing process in a way, or maybe just signal a turning point into the career of the band?
It was definitely a big, checkpoint for the band for sure. They fortunately, everyone at the E1 team is great. It's not like they're telling us how to write or anything like that. They seem pretty happy with what we're doing, so they let us do our thing. They do their thing, and we make a good team. But yeah, getting signed to a major label like that was huge. To have proper funding for videos and recording, and just have a professional team behind us feels really good.
Yeah, and they've been picking up a lot of, obviously, they have great classic bands like Avatar or Black Label Society, but it seems like they've been picking up a lot of real aggressive hardcore and that, you guys, Creeping Death, I Am, Great American Ghosts. So it almost seems like they are the perfect label to sort of push your vision, right?
Yeah, and I feel like they're kind of a sleeper label with all the heavier bands, all those heavy bands you just mentioned, and bands that have been on their roster for a while, Within the Ruins and other heavier bands like that. It's I hope they can continue that trend of bringing up this next generation of heavy bands and heavy music.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed that, especially with, I feel like Enterprise Earth, you guys are an extreme band, and seeing you on the show with Lorna Shore, was that last year? That was insane. Mm-hmm. But, I feel like your music does have some, experimental qualities behind it. I feel like a song like He Exists is very different from a song like Requiem, which is very different from a song like Nightfallen or something like that. Is it fair to say that you guys like to experiment and try new things, or do you try to maybe maintain a formula?
Yeah, no, we're all about experimentation. That was actually Luciferus I think one of the goals with Luciferus was to experiment more, because the previous albums we kind of felt, every song kind of followed the same template. And not that there's anything wrong with that at all. We just wanted, let's expand our horizons a bit. And, we have a lot of musical influences. It's not just kick you in the nuts death metal all the time. We like classical stuff, we like melodic stuff and sad songs and all these things. So yeah, just trying to bring out the best in all of our influences and capabilities into a coherent format, I guess.
Yeah. Could we be maybe expecting some gentle ballads from you guys sometime soon?
Maybe we'll do some ballads. That was kind of with the acoustic version of There's No Tomorrow. That's where we wanted to go with that, because no one's really heard Dan sing before, and we were all really stoked on that song, and the fan response for that song has been great too. So yeah, we love mixing the beauty with the brutality. So.
Yeah. To have the Lamb of God cover and that on the same album, it's maybe just. I just find it almost absurd that the same humans made that happen on the same disc.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what we were going for. So, thanks, man.
And Dan, I know he sang with Infant Annihilator before as well. So hearing him sing like that is really something that was impressive.
Yeah, and it's everyone knows Dan for being Mr. Brutal voice and stuff like that. But I don't think anyone knew. All of us in the band have known for a while that he can sing, and I think no one was expecting Dan to have this soft angel voice.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Well, I interviewed him last year at the Brooklyn show that you guys played at, and
okay.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, you have a very good talking voice. This is going to be the same guy who screams later.
Yeah, Yep. Yeah. That's Dan.
There you go. Never judge a book by its cover.
Nope.
Yep. Now, like, when it comes to like experimenting, like in this, do you almost kind of like look for inspiration? Is there kind of like sources that you are looking at, or does like the ideas just come out of the blue sometimes?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, inspiration can come from anywhere. Honestly, it can come sonically, and maybe from a band or song that's influencing me. It can come from a visual thing. It can come from an emotion. So I feel like as a musician, our job is just to be as open as we can to our creative muse, and just let that stuff through and translate it into sounds and visions and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all about being open to whatever inspires you, whatever that may be.
I'd imagine inspiration sometimes comes at like the most inconvenient times as well. Do you sometimes just think of a melody and you don't have your guitar anywhere near you? And
Oh, of course, yeah. Like the best time for me is always when I'm driving, like a long drive or something like that, and I can't really stop or anything like that to jot it down. I don't have anything with me, and it's like, man, I'll just hopefully I'll remember this when I get home or when I stop or whatever. But then it goes away. But it's part of the game.
Yeah. And do you find it easier to maybe come up with ideas when you're in the company of Dan and the other band members, or do you try to or do you find it easier to kind of like write alone more? Obviously, isolation is some of the best fuel for creativity.
Sure. I mean, I like both, honestly. Like, having company is great, honestly, just because you have someone to bounce ideas off of, and you have the energy of that other person there. Dan and I, unfortunately, really haven't had any chances to write together at all. I mean, like, when we're on tour, the idea always comes up, but, like, when you're on tour, like, tour is already exhausting enough, and it's not like we have a bandwagon or, like, our own screen room every night where we can, be alone and focused or anything like that. So yeah, writing sessions never happen on tour, at least for us, not yet. So it's pretty much all done in isolation at this point.
And I mean, the Foundation of Bones EP, I mean, was this written like just in between Luciferus and Now, or like were these kind of like was the Lamb of God cover and like the Foundation of Bones track, was it almost kind of like just written at the moment, or if these were like B-sides?
So the song Foundation of Bones was actually written about a year ago, because we started writing for the next album, for this coming album last summer. And we're sitting on all these songs, and then after all the cancellations from COVID and having our year canceled, after getting home and like letting the dust settle for a second, we're like, yeah, fuck it, let's do an EP, let's put out a song, let's do a couple covers that we've been talking about doing for a while, and let's just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, the Foundation of Bones, you never release. I mean, that's always good, because aren't you worried like the song you never release or crop out will be a B-side one day and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always that fear of unreleased material or stuff like that. But no, I guess we weren't really too worried about it on this one.
Being that it was a year old, this song was is what we're hearing like the first initial take of it, or did the song like change a lot over the span of time?
The instrumentation of the song pretty much didn't change since I first wrote it last year. A couple tweaks here and there as we were finishing up. The vocals weren't written until probably a couple weeks prior to me tracking guitars. Dan just kind of, he was demoing out the other songs, and for some reason he was having a hard time with that one, but then all of a sudden it just comes out in like 4 hours at home, and he writes the whole thing in like 4 hours. Which is, sometimes that's just the way it goes. But yeah, so it was fun. Well,
I mean, no, that's a breath of fresh air. I mean, at least it didn't take 13 years like Tool,
Right, you're right, yeah. Well, I think didn't Tool had other factors going on with their whole thing, I think.
Yeah.
But who knows, yeah.
Well, I've always said, like, obviously, you want to take your time with music. You don't want to rush it. But I always feel like, especially because Enterprise Earth, I feel like every song captures so much of a moment, and it's, like, so kind of, like, raw and has that raw charm to it that I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not a songwriter, but, like, don't you feel like maybe that, like, the longer you're working on something, the harder it is to kind of, like, maintain that moment or that inspiration?
Sure, and that's a lot of if you're being inspired by an emotion, it's you got to capture it right then and there while that emotion's fresh, while that emotion's intense, or else a couple days go by, emotions simmer out, and then you whatever you were feeling is lost forever. So in that sense, yeah, sometimes you just got to get it while the getting's good, and then sometimes songs take a couple years to write and finish. There's really no rhyme or reason to it.
Yeah, sometimes you kind of need a pinnacle moment to, add that extra flavor to it.
Sure, yeah, like an example of that, Failsafe Fallacy, which ended up being our most popular song off Luciferus. I started writing that about 5 or 6 years ago and didn't finish it until shortly before we went into the studio.
So before you even joined the band?
Yeah, that song was written for my old band, Delusions of Grandeur, and we never used it for anything. And then I joined Enterprise, and I was like, well, I got this old song. And then it ended up being the most popular song off the album. So sometimes that's just the way things work.
That's awesome. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you also used to play in the Harvest of Color, right? As well, right?
Yeah, Harvest Color. Yeah, that band's still kind of active. That's just like a passion project for me. If I have a song that's a little more chill or something like that, then it'll go out through that name.
Yeah. So being such a prolific artist between Delusions and Harvest and Enterprise, is it a different mind frame depending on the project that you are working with, or is there kind of like a usual method behind the madness that applies to everything?
It's like the same general method. It's just the way that I kind of arrive at the end game of a song, I guess, is always different. It's always going to be suited to whatever project that it is I'm working on. And there's always crossover between anything I'm working on between all the bands that I've worked with. But there's also very distinct distinctions between the three bands.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I wanted to ask you is, as somebody who has seen Enterprise Earth, the first time I saw was back in 2016 on Summer Slaughter, but then I saw you guys recently on the gig with Lorna Shore. Kick-ass show again. I'm surprised that the venue was still standing after that show, to be honest.
Yeah. Wait, was that the one at the Kingsland?
Yeah.
The shows there are always fun. Crowds are always insane.
Yeah, I was kind of. I should confess that I actually did have to watch the last portion of it in the TV screen in the main room because.
No worries. If I was attending that show, when I was 18, 19, I'd be in there with everyone else beating the shit out of each other. But now it's like, I'll just sit. So.
But when it comes to playing live, I'd imagine, especially with the intensity that your shows have, playing live is almost a completely separate art from songwriting, right?
So playing live is kind of where everything comes to fruition, I guess. From the songwriting, recording. Playing live is not to no puns or sounding silly intended. It's where things come to life. That's where things are really born and brought to the audience and stuff like that. So yeah, the live show is where everything really comes together, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that really ties it. Is there any similar? I'd imagine, having a good day in the studio and having a good day on stage has to be equally fulfilling, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And the final question I wanted to ask you, I stumbled Dan with this last year, so now I'm going to stumble you with it. How do you know when a song is done?
It just, I don't know, it just kind of feels right. Once it's done, you just know that it feels good. It's like, all right, this feels good, this feels complete. If a song's not done, then there's just, even if the song's structured and everything's written, there's something in the back of your head that's like, man, something's just not right here. And if you're having those thoughts, then, perhaps the song needs a little more work.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Fair enough. That's a decent enough answer.
That's the best answer I can give you.
It's better than when the last guy asked, where he says when the label approves it and they give me a release date.
Oh. Well, I guess technically, if you want to be super technical, then yes, that's the technical answer. But in terms of the creative answer, yeah, it's done when it feels like it's done.
The most technical answer is the most anticlimactic one.
Exactly. Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Great to chat with Enterprise Earth again. Just, obviously thanks to a certain virus that I'm choosing not to name on this outlet. Yeah, I got to say that this virus, climate change needs to hire this virus's publicist. But,
yeah.
but obviously shows aren't happening, but obviously when all this is over, we'll be seeing you on the road quite a bit. Is there just any way fans can support you during this time, and can we maybe be expecting some new Enterprise Earth between now and when shows pick up again?
Sure. So yeah, if you'd like to support us or check out our videos or anything like that, head to our website, enterpriseearthband.com. We just put a fresh summer line of merch up there. All music videos are up there. Everything Enterprise Earth is centrally located there. And then as far as new Enterprise, we are heading into studio mode in August and September. So we should hopefully have an album ready. Goal is to have it pretty much done by the end of the year, and then whenever the world is less crazy, we'll put it out on our next tour.
That's awesome. I think just because of like the world that we're living in right now, and with the title of the band, I know it sounds kind of cheesy for me to say, but like I want you guys to be like the first band to play in New York City when all this shit's over.
We would be honored to do so.
The honor will be all ours. But thank you so much, Gabe. Everybody, we are here with Gabe of Enterprise Earth. Be sure to pick up Luciferous if you haven't already, and be sure to check out the Foundation of Bones EP. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.